One of the biggest things that stood out for me as I was starting to really unravel my binge eating habit was really learning about the addictive properties of a lot of the foods that I was binging on. So most of the time I was binging on sugary stuff, like fatty or sugary stuff, mostly sugary stuff. And all along I had thought the problem was me and my propensity for being addicted to things and my kind of obsessive compulsive nature to achieve or, whatever, which I had had throughout my entire life. And so I thought that the binge eating thing was, and the compulsion to eat sweets like every evening, I thought that had something to do with just my willpower and my own brain being, you know, weak or susceptible to becoming addicted. And I just figured it was all, it was me. It was my problem, and I would beat myself up for my own addictive tendencies. And when I started to really get into it, I began researching food. This is kind of after I got leverage on myself and started breaking my habits and noticing my thought patterns that were leading me to choose to eat food over and over again. But once I started to then study, the types of foods I was attracted to binge eating, I realized, well, it is sweets, and I thought it was just because, of course, they're junk food, right? They're comfort food. It's whatever. I figured it had something to do with, having candy as a kid or something. Not realizing that actually the ingredients in the foods I was binging on have a way of actually, it's been shown in studies that our brains fire and light up in the same way with ingesting sugar as they do whenever we have drugs, right? So someone that's a drug addict has certain parts of their brain that get stimulated whenever they have the drugs. And that creates this, this addiction to that kind of stimulation, right? And it has like an addictive property, not for all people, but for people that have a tendency, they can become addicted because that part of the brain is stimulated, right? And sugar does the same thing. Sugar stimulates our brains in the same way. And for those people that, might have more of a tendency to have addictive behaviors, the sugar can do the very same thing that something like heroin can do to the brain. So I didn't even really understand that it was actually what I was eating as much as my behavior that was causing this addictive nature in my brain. So I figured it was all just me, not realizing it was actually the content of what I was eating. So I say all this just to summarize that if you're noticing that you just feel like you don't have control around sugar, or you feel like, for whatever reason you can't stop eating it, or you kind of crave it at the same time every day, or whatever, you can't, start thinking about it when you know you're not really hungry. If that's happening to you, I would want to just kind of share with you that it might not just be due to your own willpower or your inability to have control around food. It might be actually that your brain is actually addicted, and having the knowledge of an addictive brain is a whole other layer of learning how to kind of tackle the problem or achieve some sort of success around breaking that habit. It has more to do with learning that you have a brain that's addicted to a certain kind of chemical and figuring out what steps to take from there, rather than just, oh, I should stop eating so much sugar and just eat broccoli instead, or go on a new diet and try to change what I'm eating. That won't work most of the time, or at least it'll work only temporarily, because your brain is actually addicted, and an addicted brain can react much differently than just someone who's trying to eat, new foods in their diet and like add more spinach and broccoli. Like, that's a whole different problem from an addicted problem. So, and I hate to use the word problem because I feel like it's more like just an awareness that you can then overcome once you realize, oh, my brain actually might have, an addiction to this chemical reaction from sugar. So I really need to look at the fact that maybe I do have an addiction, and then take the steps to break my habit based on what, works for people that have addictions. And while it might seem scary or weird to label yourself as someone that's addicted, I say that more as a space to come from that's empowering and can really help you know how to approach it correctly, rather than looking at yourself as someone that has like a disease or something. Anyway, I hope that helps. If you have questions about your addictions or your food habits and you feel like you're kind of stuck, you can check out my website at bingeeatingbreakthrough.com. I have a free video course and then a bunch of articles and tips and stuff about what has worked for me to overcome binge eating and my addiction to sugar.